I'd just like to invite Kavi Arasu now to do his session on storytelling through blogs. Like I said before, Kavi Arasu is a social media enthusiast, blogger, and he blogs at Kavi Musings and Full Bloom.
All right. Okay, so congratulations for making it here. I was hoping to have a wonderful audience, and I can already see how wonderful it is because we have with us this forum hosted by Blog Adda. And today morning, I was having a coffee with the missus at home, and she was saying, "Are you really serious that they called you to go and speak out here?" I said, "Yes." So she said, "Well, what are you going to speak on that's going to be of interest to them?" So I told them, they're not you, okay? They're very different. They're a very different set of people. So she just said, "I wish them all the very best." And with those good wishes, I commence today. But first of all, congratulations to you, Blog Adda. And she asked me another pointed question. So she didn't leave me very easily. After that, she asked me, "So who is going to be in front of you?" And there is a huge ensemble out here. Now, there are bloggers, of course, as Ravi pointedly made a mention of. There are bloggers out here. There are tweeps. There are social media stalwarts out here, many of them that I've adored from a long distance. There are prolific chefs out here. There are photographers. There are authors. There are tech folks. And there are travelers. What a heap, what a riot of people that we have here. So congratulations to Neerav and to the fantastic team at Blog Adda once again. So give yourselves a huge round of applause. It's wonderful that we've started out this way, and I only hope that we will carry on from here, from strength to strength. All the best to you. A couple of years ago, I was on a trek, like Anil. When Anil was speaking here, I thought I'd better shut the computer down and go home, because he'd covered almost the length and breadth of everything of storytelling. But I would tell you my story. So I went on a trek, and there was this lady, there was this young tribal lady who was dressing up her kid. It almost took her about 45 minutes to bathe the sun, and almost took her another 10 full minutes to powder him up. It was a sight. And after that, she ran around and took what seemed like a ton of kajal and smeared it on his cheek and on his forehead. It made an impressive snap. And then I asked her, "Why do you do this?" And she said, "That is because you are out with a photography, with the camera. I don't know what it would do to my son. I want to ensure that the nazar is gone." And maybe when Blog Adda invites speakers like this, that's the reason. Because I really am an antithesis to many of the things and many of the achievements that several of the speakers here are coming here to talk to you about. I really am a nobody because I'm just a pen pusher in the corporate world. I do a little bit of HR, and I do a lot of talking around to people. But when I am a nobody, and I have nothing profound to offer, what can you expect from me except this? If he could do this, maybe I can do better. If that's one line of thought, and that's one stream of imagination that I could spark in some of you, I would be extremely delighted at the end of this session. Thank you. I will tell my missus that you even clapped. It was Gibran who said very nicely that half of what I say is meaningless, yet I say it because the other half should reach you. So maybe half of what I say, maybe 3/4 of what I say is going to be meaningless to several of you, but maybe some portion somewhere would get triggered. And with that hope, I'm just wading into what seems like troubled waters. Now, there are many ways of wading into troubled waters. One way is the Anil way, which is daring and showing a variety of things he's done. There's the other way, which is a very safe way, which I'm going to take today, which is to tell you a story. And to tell you a story that you really can't dispute. You know why? Because it's my story. That's the only reason. I'm going to tell you my story, which you can't dispute. And of course, if you go online, you will find many versions of one person's story. But I'm not that famous. So I'm going to go with my story here. How did I get into blogging and what did I do? Now, in the beginning, it was a very interesting sort of a beginning. I had no idea of blogs. This was 2005. I had no idea of blogs. I had no idea of how to get started. It was my geek brother who works in the technology sector who sat me down one Sunday afternoon and said, you know, this is what a blog means. This is how you start. So I said, you just do this and people come from all around the world and they read you. So he humored what I was saying of my presence and my seniority in the family scale. He said, yes, go on and try. And that's how I started. So as soon as I blogged as soon as I put out my first post, I called him up and said, yeah, you know what? Put my first post in. And his apprehensions were very clear in the smirk that came from there. He said, really? And that was that. And then I sat and waited for people to comment. I waited, and I waited, and I waited. I called him back and said, what's wrong with this technology? Nobody seems to be commenting on what I wrote. He realized that there was something wrong in his lesson. He said, that's not how it works. He said, you are a newbie here. Nobody knows you. If you have this, and this was his moment. He was my younger brother. He still is my younger brother. So this was his moment of arrival. So he said, if you think you are that exalted person who the whole world is waiting to read up, this is your moment of truth. There are far better people writing far better stuff. And that was 10 years ago, and this was pre-Facebook. He couldn't write some stuff and put it out saying, I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and 5 people like it. It wasn't that age. It wasn't the age of Twitter. It was pre-Twitter, it was pre-Facebook. It was, many of you would remember Orkut. Several of you would remember Rise. It was that age. It was what I call the age of innocence. In that age is when I got started. And there were several people who were far ahead in that journey. And so one of them is sitting right here, Manu. He's one of course, you'll hear him speak in just a bit. He was one of those people who wrote a lot of stuff, who continues to write. I just can't imagine where he finds the kind of time and energy and dedication to go and write about all of this. Manu, have I destroyed your session by any chance? So there was Manu, there was a gentleman by the name Siva. He wrote by the name Ghost Particle. Now, imagine this scenario. I'm completely new to all of this. And I say, what is a ghost particle doing writing all of this? But he used to write such fantastic blogs, and I just got a hang of what it meant to blog at that point in time. There was Gautam who was already doing a lot of stuff on the HR side, and there was another gentleman by the name Sundar. So these were the people that led me on. Very much like Anil, one of the things that really captivated my mind was every post had to have a photograph. Every post had to have a photograph. And so I was blissfully lifting photographs from all over the place and posting on my blog. I had no idea. So I was just doing all of this. And suddenly, one day, somebody wrote into me and said, by the way, did you think of it? I had no idea. So I said, really? And from then on, something else happened. I said, if that's going to be the case, I have to click my own photographs. That got me into photography. So that was my first of impacts that were caused by blogs and blogging. So I said, if I have to post photographs on my blog, those have to be mine. If somebody's got a problem with posting their photographs, I don't know why, because that photograph was really bad, I thought, but still they have a problem with it. So I thought I will have to post my own photographs. And so I started getting into photography because of that. And then something else happened, which somebody walked up to me one day. I said, I'm a blogger. And somebody says, how many hits do you get? So what's that? So, and then I got introduced to statistics. They said, how many hits do you get? Where do they come from? What time of the day do they come from? it was a completely new genre. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the end of my innocence. I swore by the statistics that came by. I used to wake up thinking, how many people would have come to my blog today? I used to post a blog, and then I used to look at the statistic meter. Okay, how many people today? And then I met several other people, and people who said, if you write this kind of content, and if you put in these kinds of words, your hits will go up. I said, really? Wow, it's going up. So then I started doing that. And my hits were going up, my content was getting received, even my wife noticed it. It was even bigger. I was finally arriving in life. And then I just kept getting better and better and better and better at that. And then I happened to meet one of the gentlemen who's sitting right here, Mr. Patwardhan here. And we had a conversation. He asked me a very pointed question, and that question was, why do you really write? And I was here bragging about the number of people who came to my blog, and they came from the US and Sweden. And I said, but why do you write? If they don't come to your place tomorrow, would you still write? And that question blew me. Do I write for people to see, or do I write for the sake of writing? I had no idea, and I had no answers at that point in time. But I had only one commitment, and that commitment was to explore what it is to write for the sake of writing. And from a seeker of statistics, I became a seeker of stories. And that is a journey that I still am on. I have given up completely. I don't have any inkling for statistics, but I still am on the journey of seeking for more stories. And that journey has taken me places. That journey has kept me wide-eyed and curious. And more importantly, that journey has made me extremely interested in what's happening in someone else's life. Because I have discovered in this that every single person has a story to tell. Every single object has a story to tell. And if we have the curiosity and the interest and an empathy, as Anil was saying earlier, to look deeper, we have a story there. In our fast-paced life, what was happening and what continues to happen to the day is our fast-paced life completely absolves the story, completely clouds the story that is happening right in front of us. And can we, for a minute, just step back and look at what's happening and see what the story there is? And if we could, and we all here in this room have the opportunity to say this story, and that gave me and still gives me a huge sense of gratitude. That I am able to look at somebody, look at something, and able to tell a story which perhaps impacts somebody somewhere. And that one thing is what keeps me going to the day. And here are four of 7 stories, in fact, which have really impacted me. This was our fruit seller. She came every day morning to my mom's house, and she gave us fruits. For ages and ages, I had no idea who she was. But then one day, I sat her down and asked her, tell me your story. She spoke for 2 hours. It was an incredible moment. It was an incredible moment. Or for that matter, why does my mother insist on tying a seashell on the car radiator grill? I had no idea, and I was completely oblivious to the fact that she was even doing it. But the fact that there was a story there was something of interest that came alive only when I decided that I have to go beyond what's necessary to figure out what's more than obvious. And this was from my home. I have only seven snaps, don't worry. So this is from my home. My mom used to, still keeps, a set of horses, statues of horses. I thought for a very long time that these were pieces of decoration. One day, in the quest for stories, I asked her, "What are these? Do you have any significance?" It is then that she told me each horse represented in her mind one member of the family. The first horse, obviously, she said, is a mud horse, represents your dad. But there was a fascinating story there as to why and how she thought of it that way, and why and how she kept adding horses. When my daughter was with us, we had a new horse, a small one, but a new horse added to the tableau. And she lives far away from us, but this was her way of connecting with us. And here, ladies and gentlemen, was a story. So stories are all around us. This is the picture of somebody who I spotted in San Francisco, sitting and singing songs for no money, for nothing. When we offered him something, he refused, because he said, "I sing for my own pleasure, not for your money." This was a story which completely captivated me, and this was right at the heart of Silicon Valley, where every dollar counts, as they say. This happened in Berlin, where they try to keep the story of unification, reunification at a very funny, fancy dress level, where soldiers dress up in the good old days, how it was. That's the way they dress up, but still they make much of a fancy of how it can be right now, with a lot of peace and revelry going on. This happens in a village where somebody preserved the bicycle for ages, just because his mother had tried riding this cycle. And this was very fascinating for me. How do you manage to say no parking between 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. because you're going to do street cleaning? This is a very fancy idea. But these, I'm giving you an ensemble of photographs because these have been inspirations for some story or the other. And there is a story behind every single thing. And this one, particularly so, because there was a story of how the mayor of the town fought so hard to get this thing going. And it was quite a story just to sit down and listen to them and to hear these stories. Now, stories bring me alive, and stories clarify my own thought, my own thinking about a particular process. They help me cry, laugh, and feel. It's not that the stories are the only thing that do that to me. Several other people do that. But they help me quite a bit. After I started writing for Parentis, which blog had started some time back, it was the first time I came open on the internet. In the sense, this was the first time my photograph came on the internet, which was almost like after about 6 to 7 years. Until then, there was only a caricature of mine. I was very reticent, and I didn't just want to get exposed, so to speak. I was very scared of who people will think of me if they see my face. But it was the first time that Nirav and Harish and several others insisted that they had to have my photograph printed. And when they did that, I started writing, and there was one particular post called Prayers on a Pad. It was my own father going through a lot of medical problems, and I written about that. And later on, I was on a plane, and it was then that there was somebody who walked up and said, "What you write touches me." I had no idea. I thought I still think I'm just dabbling with several things. I had no idea that what I write could even impact somebody. There's another time that a lady walked up to me and said, and I was writing about my daughter and my dilemmas in bringing her up, and she walked up to me and said, "Your writing brings a lot of closure to me as I dealt with my father." It blew me completely, because I had no idea as to what I was writing and who it was impacting. And that was the first evidence of something larger. Somewhere in between, this is a very interesting anecdote, and I must share this not for anything else, but the possibilities with stories. Somewhere in between, after writing a few things, I was in the middle of traffic when somebody called me and said, "Listen, I'm calling you from Australia. I want you to be on my show." I said, what show? He said, no, I'm calling you from a radio station. I want you to be on my show. I said, thank you very much. I've seen a lot of pranksters like you. He said, no, I really am calling you from Australia. I've read your blogs, and I want you to be on my show. I said, really? And then there was a show which happened that they pulled me up on their show. They got me on the show. It was a very interesting show about what we thought about Australia and India. Now, imagine I was doing this as play. I was showcasing several things from ordinary life here, and people thought it fit even to get me on shows like that. Sorry about the brag. But I was just curious, and the opportunity presented it, and therefore I was trying. The universe is made of atoms. It's not made of atoms, it's made of tiny stories. This microphone here, I'm sure it has a story. This table here, it has a story. And that's become the belief that I have, and that's what I keep moving around with. Our quest for sharing stories has a huge barrier in our equivalent quest for making them profound and perfect. And if there was one thing, and if there is still one thing that comes in my way of sharing good stories, it is this, that I want to make it perfect, and I want to make them profound, every single one of them. And that perhaps is the biggest of barriers. And after I publish, many times after I publish what is worse than a steaming pile of manure, after that, many times people come up and say, it's good, I read it. And not because they want to do me any favor, but just because of the fact that it impacted them somewhere, somebody, sometime. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is an urge that I have to share with you, that the quest for making it perfect and profound can come in the way of sharing as many different aspects of stories that we may want to. If we just get over that, of making it perfect and profound, maybe our abilities to impact, our abilities to make a difference to a large section of the population dramatically goes up. Right now, in my corporate job, I work for Asian Paints. In my corporate job, we make very good paint, by the way. You can go buy the paint. They still employ me, but this is a disclaimer. We make good paint. In my corporate job, I still am trying to foster how can the organization start telling stories to each other. Not the kind of stories that usually get the organization down, but are there ways in which you can percolate stories to ensure a culture is maintained? Are there ways by which you can get stories going to ensure progress is made? So that's what I'm doing. There is another kind of stories which is about weaving what you see and a portion of imagination. I'm not going in too much into that direction because I don't do much of that. I just want to end with one story, which is the story of the cast. My daughter, who's about 2 years old, last week had a fall. And when she had a fall, she broke her arm. And 2 of the bones are broken. She still has a cast. And for us, we wanted to see how could we lessen her pain. And one of the things that we did was paint a variety of things on her cast. We had Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and elephants and the sun and the leaves and the fishes painted on her cast. She still carries them. And whenever she sees another kid in the elevator, wherever she meets, she is so proud of her cast. She goes around and tells them, fish. And then the other kid looks up at his dad. So, what about mine? And at night, every night, when her pain, because of keeping her arm in one position, goes up, that is the time when the elephant begins chasing the fish. And when the fish begins to ride on the leaf, when the leaves begin to chase the sun. In a child's mind, there are no 7 wonders. There are 1 million. There are 1 million wonders. If you thought that quote is mine, it's not mine. But I resonate so much with that quote because it's so much of wonder. And as we grow up, we really regress because we miss that wonder. And if all of us can keep that wonder alive, how beautiful would it be? So, ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to keep looking just beyond the obvious, to keep listening just beyond what is most said. And maybe you all keep telling stories. Because when we keep telling stories, you know what we do? We create a new reality for different sets of people. And we never know, when each of you blogs, you never ever can imagine who all it impacts and how. Because several people just don't come back to you and tell you it impacted me, but several people do get impacted. And on that note, I would like to thank you for listening to my story here. As I said, half of what I said could be meaningless, but I still said it because the other half hopefully reached you. Thank you and have an enjoyable day.